Good afternoon and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's public hearing for Wednesday, April 14th, 2021, relative to Bill 2021-1339. Clerk, please read the title of the bill.
Bill 1339, petition from the residents of the city requesting a public hearing before City Council relative to moving the money from the military budget and invest in social programs and human needs. The petition is valid in accordance to the Home Rule Charter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And for the record, we are joined today by members Kraus, Strasburger, and Gross. Other members may be joining us shortly and periodically throughout the meeting. Our first order of business will be the testimony from our registered speakers. Please give your name and address for the public record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address council. Our first speaker, please. Madam Clerk.
First speaker is Stephanie Pavlik, followed by Reverend Paul Dordell.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Stephanie Pavlik. My address is 241 Edmund Street.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for receiving our petition and for setting up this hearing today. I'm a member of the Pittsburgh Move the Money campaign steering committee. I joined this campaign along with a group of other concerned Pittsburgh residents because I strongly believe the military is severely overfunded while other necessary programs go under or even unfunded. The federal government's 2021 discretionary budget includes an unprecedented $740 billion to be allocated to national defense. While local governments cannot set the military budget, this bloated spending most affects the people local governments serve, so we must act at a local level. During COVID, the need for services to meet our needs has become clearer and clearer as more people are struggling to make ends meet. People in Pittsburgh desperately need money for programs like SNAP to buy food, Social Security to support the elderly and disabled, housing assistance to put a roof over their heads, and more. Military overspending affects all of us here in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Move the Money campaign shared our draft resolution for the City Council with all of you on Monday. I'm here today to voice my support for the City Council to pass this resolution, following the footsteps of the Allegheny County Council, which recently passed a similar resolution under the guidance of Councilperson Anita Prezio. To summarize, the resolution includes 3 actionable items. First, the city shall once again take up releasing a yearly report on how military overspending negatively affects the citizens of Pittsburgh. Second, the City of Pittsburgh's mayor and City Council shall send to the Pennsylvania congressional delegation representing the City of Pittsburgh an open letter that calls for a drastic reduction in the military budget to be divested to human needs. Third, the City Council of Pittsburgh and the Mayor of Pittsburgh shall, in the above mentioned open letter, urge the City of Pittsburgh's Pennsylvania congressional delegation to join the Defense Spending Reduction Caucus in calling for an immediate 10% reduction in military spending, and further join Representative Barbara Lee's call for a 50% reduction in military spending. The people of Pittsburgh are being hurt by the bloated military budget. As taxpayers that contribute to the federal budget, we deserve our tax dollars funding programs that benefit us and give us what we need to survive. I look forward to all of you serving the people of Pittsburgh in every way possible and seeing that the people of the city have our needs met. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
To Reverend Paul Dordell, followed by Ed Clunan.
Good afternoon, honorable council persons. I would like to speak in favor of the council adopting a Move the Money resolution. My name is Paul Dordell, and I've been a resident and worker in Pittsburgh since 2008. I'm an Iraq war veteran and a 13-year veteran of the United States Army. I've served my country honorably and was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for my service in Iraq. I believe that our country now has the unique opportunity to lead the world and truly be exceptional yet not by continuing to use empty rhetoric, but in actual practice. I had an epiphany in Iraq. I realized that the people of Iraq were beautiful people who were not our enemies, and that we, the United States, had destroyed their country under false pretenses. There were no weapons of mass destruction, other than the ones we used in Iraq and Afghanistan and many other Middle Eastern countries. In recent years, I've seen more money spent on the U.S. military than even the generals in the Pentagon are asking for. I've read studies that show that more Americans like me do not believe we should have 800 plus foreign military bases around the world or spend trillions of dollars to be the policemen of the world when no one really is asking us to do so. More and more of us do not want to use military force overseas and spend so much money on the military budget. Overwhelmingly, the cities of countries that would call us allies believe that the United States is the greatest threat to world peace. Yet the administration is desiring to modernize our nuclear weapon arsenal even after the United Nations have declared them illegal on January 22, 2021. We continue to use immoral drones that kill innocent people. We illegally attack sovereign nations without a declaration of war. These offensive actions have not made the world safer and have nothing to do with the noble reasons I joined the United States Army. If COVID has taught us anything, it should be that our budget priorities are all wrong and must change. We must reduce the amount of money we use to kill and begin to use more of our tax dollars to heal our nation and the world. We must stop investing trillions of dollars in weapons of mass extinction and work towards peace and a restoration of our planet. If the best way to determine if a government is just in its action is by looking at how it treats its most vulnerable citizens, then clearly the United States is not the shining example we claim to be. But we can be, if we stop our warmongering ways and choose the way of diplomacy and peace. I implore you, the honorable members of Pittsburgh City Council, to use your considerable influence to urge the Pennsylvania delegation to the United States Congress to join the Military Spending Reduction Caucus, reduce the military budget, and move the money from war to human needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ed Clunan, followed by J. Teen Walker.
Hello, my name is Ed Clunan. I'm a 74-year-old resident of Munhall, 877 11th Avenue. I will say things for the first 2 minutes regarding the military aspect, and the last minute I hope to use to talk about my lifetime experience in the area. The military budget has increased steadily year after year, and there is no halting it, as both political parties seem to have endless cooperation for military adventures, bombs, jets, and military bases. Most of the following information that I'm going to use in the next minute comes from the Institute of the University of Brown, whose mission is to research the cost of war. The estimates of the direct violence deaths in the last 2 decades is 801,000. The price of these wars is $6.4 trillion. The defense budget funds 800 bases in 70 different countries. The military budget spends more than the next 10 defense spending countries combined. Over 3 times the defense budget of China, 10 times the amount of Russia. China has 1 foreign base, Russia has 20. The Move the Money resolution offered today simply asks City Council and the Mayor to write a letter of support to the PA congressional delegation to support and advocate for the effort to cut the defense budget by 10% and move these billions into efforts to improve the quality of lives in this country. Having lived in the Mon Valley forever, the collapse of the steel industry was a defining issue of the region. In the last 6 months, people have begged in Homestead incessantly to patch West Street up from the hill from the Homestead Grays Bridge. When the council got the money, they did it. Go to Fifth Avenue in McKeesport. It looks bombed out with the exception of Minerva Bakery. The same can be said of Grant Street running up the hill from 837 in Duquesne. It has been 40 years since the collapse of the industry, and local governments struggle to fill potholes, yet alone pave streets each and every year. Over those 40 years in these towns and in the city, Generations of students have suffered from education programs necessarily cut in their districts. As both local, city and town and state officials fight for funding, while simultaneously increases in the federal budget for more bombs, bases, and wars goes on year after year. With the release of the streets to be paved in the city, I noted in the paper yesterday, the chairman of the committee said, we never have enough money to pave the streets each and every year.
Next speaker is
Next speaker, please.
King Walker, and he would be followed by Matthew Nemeth.
Hi, my name is Jay Tim Walker. I live in Shadyside in City Council District 8. My address is 5806 House Street, apartment 7R. I'm the vice chair of the Green Party of Allegheny County. The Green Party of Allegheny County supports the Move the Money campaign because it emphasizes 3 out of 4 of our key value out of our pillars, those of democracy, social justice, and peace. It's a cliche, but I'll repeat it. Budgets are moral documents. They're supposed to be democratically determined by our society. There should also be transparency so that we can have oversight into how our collective tax dollars are spent. The defense budget is the least transparent part of our federal budget. The Move the Money campaign is also a social justice issue because there are so many human needs that have their funding eaten up by military spending. We could be spending that money on housing, on public transit, on healthcare. I know oftentimes when we talk about these issues at the local level, we talk about how federal funding needs to come to support these initiatives, but we're talking about the federal budget right now. The Move the Money campaign is also a peace issue. Even if our military presence around the world was cost-free, we would support reducing our troop counts around the world. We have the largest military in the world, and we oppress other nations because of it. The peace issue is also really personal to me. My father was forced to go to Vietnam to fight someone else's war. He wasn't able to dodge the draft like so many others, and it seriously impacted his life, the life of our family, and our military presence impacted the lives of so many people around the world every day. So again, we would like to see this money moved away from the military and towards human needs, including housing, public transit, and healthcare. The resolution calls for transparency on how our money is funneled into the military. And I know the city council and the mayor has really been prioritizing transparency. So this is something that city council has passed into law years ago, and we're asking for you guys to follow through with that. I think Pittsburgh residents have a right to know how much of their money is going to fund things that Pittsburgh residents don't agree with. And that information will allow us to apply pressure so that the money is actually, the expenditures match our moral desires. All right, thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can now. And Councilman Kraus is going to chair for a second.
Okay.
Matt, your 3 minutes has started.
Okay. Hello, my name is Matt Nemeth. I am a resident of McCandless, but I frequently work and recreate within the city of Pittsburgh. I am a member of the Green Party of Allegheny County, and they are a co-sponsor of this Move the Money campaign, as Jay previously said. I think we all know that our country has a very uncomfortable problem with mass poverty. And if you didn't know that, I'm going to briefly describe the size of this humanitarian crisis. Before the pandemic, there are about 40 million Americans living in poverty. The latest numbers now put that over 50 million. And those numbers are huge, right? They're like impossible for us to even imagine. So let me just try to put those into context. Before the pandemic, the number of extremely poor people in our country was equivalent to the entire population of Canada. It is now akin to the entire population of South Korea or Australia 2 times over. These people are real, they're struggling, and a vast majority of them have been living in this state for years. And I'm talking about poverty because it is central to understanding why our military budget is both unethical and immoral. At the same time that this immense amount of people are struggling to provide basic necessities for themselves and their family members, the American federal government is spending hundreds of millions of dollars every single year on the Department of Defense. DoD spending was increased under every administration of the 21st century thus far. Now President Biden is recommending an increase in spending. Just a couple of months ago, and this sounds like fantasy, but tragically it's not, it was made public that the Pentagon plans on spending $100 billion over the course of 9 years on a new weapon of mass destruction, the length of a bowling lane, and 20 times more powerful than the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. The Air Force plans to buy over 600 of these nuclear missiles from Northrop Grumman. When is this going to end? Or maybe better question is, how is this going to end? We're talking about massive amounts of money that could be used toward ending mass poverty, transitioning to net zero carbon emissions by 2030, and preparing communities for climate change. Instead, the government is investing in state-of-the-art efforts to kill and threaten people around the world. Like many of my friends and neighbors today, I am strongly urging members of Pittsburgh City Council and Mayor Bill Patuto to pass the Move the Money resolution. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next speaker, please, Madam Clerk.
Edith Bell, followed by Ikuhana Halmakina.
Would you call them again, please, Madam Clerk?
She's there.
There's Edith Bell.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
we can. Thanks, Edith. We can hear you.
Okay. My name is Edith Bell. I live at 3890 Beulah Boulevard, apartment 311. I am a longtime member of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. We have been fighting to prevent wars and stop wars for over 100 years, starting with World War I. And at this point, since the governments of the world do not see the immorality of wars, we're trying to make them understand the financial cost. A lot of what I'm going to say has been said before. And the as you know, the United States spends 10 times as much money on wars as the next 10 countries combined. About this year, about $750 billion goes for the so-called defense. It's more like for wars and preparations for wars. Well, roughly 10% of the US population lives in poverty. We're asking and we're joining the coalition to cut, to ask Congress to cut military spending and put that money to fight hunger, homelessness, for health care, etc. We know that City Council does not make the federal budget, but we need City Council to support and encourage Congress to go in that direction. And we're right now, President Biden has proposed this big budget and nobody knows how to pay, or they're arguing how to pay for it. Well, the money is right there in the military budget. Cut the military budget by 10% and it easily can pay for all that. And
Okay.
yes, and a lot of that, what I said has been said before, but that's the way it goes when you have a lot of speakers.
Thank you, Edith. Okay, Madam Clerk, can we have the next speaker, please?
Next speaker is Iku Hanum Halmakina. I don't see her in the waiting room.
Okay.
And the next speaker is Kota Kibe. Don't see him either.
Okay.
Next speaker is Tayfun Gold.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having this public hearing. 7407 Church Street is where I live. I am speaking here to voice my absolute support for the City Council adopting the Move the Money resolution. For military budget in 2021, the taxpayers in Pittsburgh will be paying federal taxes that amount to $688 million. And for the record, the operating budget for the whole operating budget for the city of Pittsburgh that this council earlier published is $564 million. So that is that we're going to be paying federal taxes in excess of $120 million than the whole city budget. And here's what those $688 million that we're paying to fund the military could have actually paid for instead in Pittsburgh. It could have provided for more than 200,000 children receiving low-income healthcare for 1 year. It could have provided for close to 16,000 jobs that pay $15 per hour with benefits for 1 year. It could have provided more than 1.2 million households with wind power for 1 year. Or it could have paid for 8,000 elementary school teachers for 1 year. Other speakers before me already touched on how huge, how insane the US military budget is, as it is more than the next 10 largest military budgets summed up. So then we know that this is not about the safety or the concern for security, keeping this country safe. We know that this is simply a mechanism. This is simply about funneling public funds into private hands. We know that this is not about bringing democracy or concern for human rights in some remote corner around the world, because if the US government had the slightest concern for human rights, it would start by cleaning its own house first, as we face systemic racist police brutality, as we have mass concentration camps that house thousands and thousands of immigrants who ironically are having to flee their homes due to the policies that are enforced on them by the US government, destroying their economies and countries. Where we have a country where there is 7 empty homes for every homeless, where tens of thousands die on an annual basis due to simple health issues and because they don't have access to healthcare. So it's not about human rights either. And I want to end by noting that you are elected officials, and how better could it be to represent the will of the people by actually passing this resolution and pushing this pressure up to the Congress, because as testified by so many before me and myself, people want money moved from war, and people want that money to be deployed for taking care of public needs, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last speaker is Greg Godels.
He's here. Hi, Greg. Welcome. Greg, you're muted right now.
Sorry.
There you are. We can hear you.
Great. My name is Greg Goddles. I live at 7121 Penn Avenue in Point Breeze. I'm speaking in favor of the Move the Money resolution. In 1945, the United States attained a status nuclear status that they maintained, a superiority they maintained, our country maintained for a long time. By the 60s, we had enough weaponry. At that time, the theory was mutual assured destruction, that we could stave off any kind of attack. No enemy was ready to attack this country or threaten this country. There was no existential threat to this country since that time, and there hasn't been anything close to that since. Nonetheless, the military budget kept climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing for decades. The Cold War ended in 1991, and the military budget kept climbing and climbing and climbing for decades. In the late 40s, our government changed the name of the military establishment from the War Department to the Defense Department. So we have every reason to assume that a defensive posture is the only thing that should concern Americans and our policymakers. Nonetheless, our leadership, our federal leadership, has either through intimidation or lack of integrity or courage, has been enslaved really by the so-called military-industrial complex. So this budget grows and grows and grows without ending. And we lead the arms race. We don't follow the arms race. We don't respond to others. We have a weapon system in development before the last weapon system that we have has been implemented. And too many of them become boondoggles, and too many of them become unsuccessful even as weapon systems. So we move on to the next one. This has to end. This has to end. It doesn't serve us well. It doesn't serve the American people well. It doesn't serve the world well. Now I'm quoting from the Wall Street Journal. The number of people living in extreme poverty or on less than $1.90 a day is expected to rise by as many as 39 million individuals this year, after climbing by 124 million in 2020. It was the first increase since the 1990s, by far the biggest on record. It's the Wall Street Journal. The World Bank said this. This is a World Bank claim. By the end of the decade, the United Nations warns the number of people in extreme poverty could rise above 1 billion, an increase of 250 million due to the pandemic. It's really an outrage when you think about the kind of money that we spend allegedly for defense. If there's hostility out there, wouldn't it be better to devote this money to making peace through helping these people that are living on $1.90 a day? Isn't that a more sensible approach for our foreign policy? I'm hoping, it's great to see our city council listening to us as we say these things today, but I'm hoping they will show the.
Thank you, Greg. Madam Clerk, have we exhausted the list of speakers?
Yes, we have exhausted the list.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to open it up to members if they have any comment. Councilwoman Gross or Strasburger, if you wish the floor. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't really have any comments today. I've got notes in front of me, and I appreciate the callers reaching out. They've also been in contact with my office, and I appreciate all of their organization. They're being very thorough and following through. So I really appreciate that.
Good. Thanks, Councilwoman. Okay, with that, we will then entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, and I'll second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.